And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
All right, everybody. Eric Dym, your most complained cop, NYPD. This is New York's Finest Retired Unfiltered podcast, bringing you 265 Police Live series. Along with me is the founder and the co-host of the podcast, John Macari, retired lieutenant. We got a good episode for you. We're talking about the shutdowns, what's going on the campuses throughout the entire country, and of course, what's going on, especially in New York City, and how it's being handled by the NYPD. John, let's get right into it. Let's talk about the NYPD's response to Columbia University.
Sure, yeah. So, as usual, what happens in New York City starts to spark throughout the entire country, right? So, Columbia University's first. We have students take over the entire campus. They actually block Jewish students from entering the building. This is something that's reminiscent of, early 60s, 50s when the civil rights movement's happening, where black students were blocked by white supremacists from going on the campus and entering universities when the law was passed that they were actually allowed to. It's also very reminiscent of Hitler's Germany. Absolutely disgusting. Sparks off there. It spreads through all the other universities, NYU, Fashion Institute of Technology, FIT in Manhattan, and then it spreads throughout the entire country. But you see totally different responses throughout the entire country because, again, like what we talk about a lot is things will happen that are allowed to happen. And what we see in New York City is you can do whatever you want. If you're fighting for a leftist Marxist agenda, the NYPD basically supports you, and so does New York City Mayor Eric Adams. He might not say it; they might tweet some nasty things about you, but there's basically going to be a zero enforcement response, and there will be misinformation being given out by the New York City Police Department, which there has been.
Well, I think there's so many layers to peel back when it comes to this stuff that's going on, not just New York City, but the entire country. And I think the important part that you just mentioned, like John said, is we're seeing the different responses throughout the country based on the geographical area, based on different states, different cities, which is quite interesting to see the response. That is just proof in itself how politics has infected the law enforcement profession, whether it's negative or positive. But the response has been based on politics. It's not apolitical anymore. Law enforcement is now completely politically driven, which is a complete new phenomenon that we have to understand how politics now correlates to the level of policing. It affects public safety for a community. It affects ideology for a community. So let's first identify this. I'm a firm believer that, John, I believe you would say the same, that the pro-Palestinian efforts, or you might say this pro-Palestinian orchestrated protest, now riots throughout the entire country, are actually have nothing to do with Palestine. That's a completely different agenda. Would you agree just on that alone?
I think it's a Marxist agenda. I think that you could replace your pro-Palestinian effort or your anti-Israel effort, and you could change all of those people, and they're all basically, a lot of them are the same people, to an anti-police movement, to the BLM movement, to the George Floyd movement, whatever it may be, the trans right movement, the Stonewall movement, whatever you want to say. This is a Marxist agenda. Western society's under attack. If you're listening and watching the information that's being put out on this campus, it has nothing to do with Palestine. They just have the Palestinian flags. They'll have a little bit of information about what's happening in Palestine, the history of that. But really what it is the breakdown of American culture and Western society. This is a Marxist agenda that's being allowed to take place in blue cities throughout this entire country.
Absolutely. That's another reason to indicate, and we could see that this entire movement has been completely orchestrated and done by design. And we always talk about how attacking the police, or at least I always say, the attack on the police is tangible. How do you tear down a society? The fabric of society is by attacking the boots on the ground, of law enforcement, not just in New York City, but throughout the entire country, because the cops on the street are tangible. How are the cops attacked? Attacked through public record through the 50A, exposure of their records to have alpha males and alpha females removed from the law enforcement profession to allow this movement to perpetuate. So that's why I believe this was all done by design and orchestrated to make the police departments throughout the country meek and timid so that this movement can progress. If the law enforcement profession throughout the country was still overwhelmingly majority of alpha males and alpha females, especially in leadership, this movement would not be possible. But what do we see? We see emasculated police departments throughout the country. We see weak, inept, and inadequate leadership that has been panded to this woke progressive movement that has put on this show to make basically gaslight the public for them to believe that the police department, especially in New York City, is actually responding to the threats of terrorism. And that's exactly what it is, of this political ideology movement at campuses throughout the city, especially in Columbia, to give this idea that they're actually addressing the issue, but they're only putting a Band-Aid on it and they're not getting to the solution. So you and I always talk about it, going after the heads of these movements. Why is that so important? Let's explain to the public why it's so important that we don't put this Band-Aid and we actually get to the root of the problem if we actually want to address the problem.
Yeah, so if you're looking to address a problem, a crime-related problem, or a public safety-related problem, I'm going to take it away from protests right now. I'm going to bring it on to drugs, right? You have a problem with drug dealing in your neighborhood. Is it more effective for the NYPD to go and arrest low-level drug dealers and drug users in an effort to stop the drug dealing and the drug problem in that community? Or is it more effective to go and build a case with the heads of who is actually distributing in the larger, like go after the larger drug dealers, the people who are supplying the dealers who ultimately will supply the drugs on the street? Now, of course, you're going to have to do that low-level enforcement to gather intel and move up. But what we're seeing is we're not seeing any of that in New York City at all, because there are no consequences for these low-level protesters, and there's no consequences for these low-level organizers. And again, I've been saying it, and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. There are planned and coordinated shutdowns of critical infrastructure in New York City. Now, I'm not talking college campuses. I'm talking about bridges, tunnels, train stations, airports. College campus is another thing, but I think it's very pivotal what I said there. Jewish students don't feel safe. And so I think it's a very dangerous precedent to set that the mob can rule and take over a campus. And we'll get into that. But what we're seeing is the NYPD and New York City mayor are playing games, and they're trying to misdirect everybody. Last week, Kaz Daughtry, I think, I don't have any information, but I think that there's some outside agitators and these people are being funded. Like, wow, Kaz, congratulations. You must have been listening to the news for the last 4 years, where every retired cop that goes on there has been saying how they're funded, how they're coordinated, how they're organized, and why are they not? Why are police departments, the Department of Justice, the Attorney Generals, the FBI, the CIA, why are they not going after these organizers? If this was a right-wing movement, these people would be jailed, maybe without trial, like we seen in January 6th, like we see with those people. So, we're seeing a two-tier justice system right here, and we're seeing that Marxists are be able to act with impunity for leftist movements, and the NYPD is playing misdirection games and trying to basically gaslight the public. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we think so. We're looking into it. Like, wow, you should have probably been looking into it. And again, I think that a lot of this funding is going to come from non-government organizations that their sole source of income is taxpayer funded. Their sole source of income comes from government grants. I think if you look into that, you're going to see that totally. So you're not only paying for the cops to respond to these protests and overtime to respond to these protests, you're actually paying for those tents for those protesters. You're paying for the food for those protesters. You're paying for their pay because there's a lot of them being paid, right? We had a Craigslist ad that we put out a while ago where it was come and protest in New York City, $30 an hour. I mean, that's a pretty damn good job. It's way higher than minimum wage.
You get a W-2 for that?
What W-2, baby? Cash money.
You got to pay taxes on that? Or they pay you through Zelle? You know, you know what? I got to say, brother, let me tell you, spot on. You're absolutely right when it comes to this movement on here. Absolutely. I think that you're spot on. What's interesting about this also is that what you said, the actions are similar, right? The actions of January 6th and the BLM riots, I wouldn't say they're the same. I think the BLM riots are far more violent and far more worse. But the actions are similar, right? There's an orchestrated attack. There's an orchestrated plan to either create violence or have a change of political ideology. There's a movement, whether it's January 6th or BLM. The actions are similar, but the consequences are far different. The response of law enforcement and also the consequences of potential prosecution. What do we see for BLM? We don't see any prosecution. And if anything, when they say crime pays, it sure does pay, because most of the people that participate in these BLM protests or BLM riots were handsomely paid for their actions, particularly in New York City when it came to lawsuits that emanated from substantiated civilian complaints. So again, as I said, the actions are similar, but the consequences are far different. And that should solidifies how we say politics has infected the law enforcement profession, and politics has now driven the direction of a particular law enforcement agency. So what's our forte? The NYPD. We talk about New York City. So you just a great point you just brought up. You just brought up Kaz Daughtry. He's the Deputy Commissioner of Operations. Whether he's a civilian, uniform, at this point, it's a complete mishmash. But what do we see? We see on TV, it's obvious that he's leading the police department, or in conjunction with John Schell and also Tariq Shepard, that they're kind of commingling this leadership position, and command is completely out of it. But as the leader of the NYPD, we constantly hear him refer to as, I did this, I did that, I did this. And it's very, very immature, lack of public relations, lack of understanding of leadership. So what I say is there's no I in team, but there is I in idiot. And he's acting like a complete buffoon, because what did he say on TV? He said that they cannot respond properly at Columbia University because it's a private entity. It's a private location. So let's get into that so we can explain to the public what it means as far as the NYPD's duties, responsibility, accountability, and their ability to respond to a private location. Let's get right into that, John.
Sure. So what breaks first in the news is a Columbia University professor. I'm going to mangle his name right now, but it's Shai Davidai, I believe is how you say it. Davidai, right? So who, by the way, supported the defund the police movement, supported the emasculation of police. He tweeted out, "Within our lifetime is the organization behind all of the encampments in New York City. New York City Mayor Eric Adams refuses to deal with them and prefers to pass the buck on to college presidents. Americans pay attention now and pay back during his next campaign," right? So that kind of goes viral. He told Jewish students it's not safe for them to come to campus, because it wasn't, because it still isn't, because there's thousands of people in there. And if you see what's going on there, it's scary looking. I mean, it looks like a militarized zone. Right. So and he's 100% right. The misdirection of New York City Mayor Adams. There's nothing that Eric Adams could solve. He ran for office to solve all these problems. But now that he's in office, the only thing he could do is point fingers. He hides behind the law. He either hides behind the law or he points blame to someone else. There's nothing I could do. It's the college professor. It's the college. It's the colleges that are allowing it, the faculty that are allowing it. So Daughtry, of course, he's Adams' little. I don't want to say it on here because we'll get demonetized again. But he's his
Come up with another word for it.
Yeah, and he's his little boy. You
might as well, because listen,
he's his buck boy.
I like the shirt, but you know they're going to be talking shit about you for that shirt.
He's Adams' buck boy. So, but anyway,
Yeah.
so he responds to this professor. He retweets it, and this is what he says, Eric. He says the NYPD stands against hate, racism, harassment, and violence in all forms. They stand against it. But just as we expect others to follow the law, so must we. These campuses are private locations. The NYPD can't take enforcement action on without permission to enter the campus from the school and without the school declaring those campuses as trespassers. Like always, our officers are ready, willing, and able to end what is happening on college campuses across our great city. However, the cooperation and permission from these schools, we are not legally allowed to do anything. Absent an emergency, everyone, no matter what your beliefs are, please be safe. But know that when you call, like always, we'll be there. What do you think about that, Eric?
We outside, brother. We outside, right? Right, Deputy Commissioner of Operations? We outside. That's what he always says. First of all, let me say this. This is why these social media accounts have to be removed from most of the upper echelon of the New York City Police Department. We need one person in charge of these social media accounts who does this carefully. First of all, in his position, I would definitely avoid these direct statements. I would not play this game of having direct statements because what he doesn't realize, and that's, I said, terrible public relations, he just boxed himself into this position where he's basically handicapping himself in the police department saying, hey, there's only so much we could do. And yet, this has not even gotten completely out of control yet. It's my opinion that at this point, it's just dry runs. At this point, they're just testing the waters and seeing how the police department responds in New York City. How does the police departments throughout the entire country respond? Is there an orchestrated response throughout the country at the same time? This is all dry runs. And to make a direct statement like that really boxes you in. And first of all, I think it's completely, again, as I said earlier, I think, and I even said on a tweet, I think it's gaslighting the public for them to believe that the police department cannot assist. But yeah, not even say assist. The police department cannot come up with a solution and address the problem. All they could do is assist them and put out a Band-Aid. How does that make you feel, being a former member of the New York City Police Department, that we can't, that we're almost being inferior to other organizations? We're the New York City Police Department. We're supposed to be, as people say, the biggest gang. We're supposed to take action. We're supposed to be the ones that they look to for help. Not, hey, well, we can't help you. Only so much. How does that make you feel? Because honestly, I'm perturbed by that response.
I mean, well, first of all, he's lying. I mean, none of what he said in that statement is true. I mean, so that's a big problem. Like, I honestly, like, students should form a coalition and sue the New York City Police Department, name Kaz Daughtry, name John Schell, name Eric Adams, because they're completely lying. That is not an accurate statement whatsoever. The police department cannot enter the campus without permission authority because it's a private location. I mean, I don't know, man. I've been going to clubs and bars, and I was a cop a long time. We enter whatever private location that we want to if we feel there is a public safety hazard, if we feel that there's an danger to the public, if we feel that there's a hostile situation occurring. Jewish students are being barred from going into schools. So I keep saying this. I haven't said it. I keep saying it to whoever like calls me or talk to. I don't think I've said it publicly yet. But last time we saw such of a fascist ideology as we're seeing in this case, and yes, I believe fascists are on the left. Fascism and communism, I believe, go hand in hand. I don't believe that fascism is a right state. I believe right is complete anarchy. Too far right's complete anarchy. To the left is top-down government, communism, fascism, call it whatever you like. I'll debate any college professor on that any day of the week. And so what we're seeing that basically we're allowing these fascists to do whatever they want. And the New York City Police Department saying there's nothing we could do. They're barring students from going to school. You can't enter the school. So like I said, and when it happened in Germany, it started with the Jews. It ended with the Jews, right? They were the final solution. But in America today, what we're going to see is that this whole fascist movement is starting with the Jews, but it's not going to end with them. It's going to infect every level of America, every level of your life. Because next it's going to be, oh, well, you're a Republican, you're a conservative, you're an Italian, you're not on this, you're not on that. It's all a part of this DEI movement, and he's completely lying. And am I off base by saying that he's lying that the police department cannot enter private locations?
That's why I said he's gaslighting the public for them to get this ideology that the police department cannot help, that he's boxing himself in to say that the police department only do so much. It's absolutely ridiculous. What do we do millions of times a year, thousands of times per day? There's 77 precincts, 12 transit districts, and 9 PSAs, right? And I'm sure there's going to be someone commenting, there's 78. Listen, if that's not the completely accurate number, I'm sure it's around that. I'm pretty sure it's about 77 to 78 precincts.
77 precincts.
77, right? 12 transit districts, 9 PSAs. We have special operations unit. We're doing 3 tours of patrol a day. Where do we go every day on 911 calls? We go into people's homes. There's nothing more private domain than someone's home. We go into private homes every day. And what do we usually hear at the door? Overwhelming majority, most people, they don't want to sit. Why are you coming to my home? You need a warrant. And we go in anyway. Why? To preserve life, to preserve safety. That's what we do. And it goes the same way for Columbia University or any other campus in New York City. It's absolutely ridiculous. That's a complete lie. Now, this is the part that he'll probably argue with us, right, John? And you and I talked about this. So let's just address this right away to get this out of the way before he's going to have this argument. Do we arrest people for trespassing on our own volition without Columbia University? Absolutely not. Let's explain that before we go into the enforcement part of preserving life. Let's go into the trespass aspect, because that's where I think they would go to try to combat what we're saying.
Yeah, I mean, well, again, that's another misdirection. But I just want to make it perfectly clear. These campuses are private locations, and the NYPD cannot take any enforcement action without permission to enter the campus, and the school without the school declaring those campuses as trespassers. So he adds in the trespasser at the end. But what his statement is, well, we can't enter it. We have to follow the law, and we're not allowed to go on that campus. It's a blatant lie. You are allowed to go on that campus for extingent circumstances. Like Eric said, police could kick in your door under extingent circumstances, circumvent getting a search warrant, circumvent all these things. There is a hostile environment happening on these campuses, and numerous thousands of individuals don't feel safe and want them removed. And now we're seeing these college graduations are being stopped. They're going back to remote learning. These are the same kids that lost their senior year in high school. They're now losing their senior year in college, and he's lying to you, right? And now, so he puts it on the trespasser. So in order for you to be arrested for trespass, there needs to be clearly posted signs, right, at a private location that you cannot enter without permission and authority. If you're trespassing, you will be prosecuted, blah, 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 blah. But also on top of that, he is correct to lock someone up for trespassing. The NYPD needs a complainant. Who is the custodian of Columbia or NYU or FIT? That is the faculty, any member of the faculty from there. So you would need them to be a complainant. However, these encampments are violating so many different laws in New York City that the fact that he even brings up trespassing is to misdirect and is to further the lie. This is how they spin. This is the Comstat magic that we constantly talk about. This is a lie. Because I'm going to give you one thing, Eric. Loitering. You are not allowed to loiter overnight on school or university property. Loitering. That does not need the permission or authority from the school. You're violating public health law. You're violating New York State Penal Code. But there's so many others here: harassment, intimidation, fear. I mean, it really is. I'm going to say right now that I keep saying that when are you going to lock up these organizers and charge them appropriately? And by appropriately, for those of you that don't know, if you're trying to cause fear, panic, and alarm in order to further or reach a political aim, that is an act of terrorism. That is considered terrorism. So I believe these are terrorist acts. I believe the coordination and it falls under numerous conspiracy laws as well as Rico. So there are very serious charges that could be brought down on all of these people. But the NYPD could 100% clear out these encampments without permission or authority from the university faculty. So they're 1,000% lying to you.
I gotta laugh because you mentioned Rico, and that stupid idiot AOC said that Rico is not a crime, it's a category. So if anybody's watching this, we all know Rico is a crime. It's absolutely a crime. She's just a complete buffoon. What an idiot. I mean, we see just throughout the entire nation in politics, we see it on the local level, we see it on the national level. We just have some idiots running this country. It's so sad. But yeah, and listen, you and I were talking offline. I was giving this example, right? Just because something's private doesn't mean it's not open to public view. So we were talking offline. I was giving this scenario. Rhetorically speaking, we all live in New York City. What do we have a lot? Everyone has cars. We all like to go to dealerships. That's where we buy cars. Most of the dealerships, you could drive down a strip. There'll be Ford dealership, Nissan. There'll be several dealerships next to each other. But at night, when they're closed down, their parking lots are private, but they're open to public view. And if we saw encampments of people loitering and sleeping in their driveways and just camping out, if they brought their vans or an RV and they were sleeping there, the police department would enforce loitering and have these people move. And those are private locations. So again, it just shows that Kaz Daughtry is completely lying to the public. Now, is he lying? Here's a good question. This is the part that I haven't made my mind, or maybe it's both. And that's why we go back to him saying he's a useful idiot. And that's why I say he always says I. You're right. I is not in team. It's an idiot. But he always says that, well, what he's saying right now with this lie, do you think that he's completely inept, that he doesn't actually know the legality? Or do you think he's doing it at the direction or the behest of the mayor? Do you think that he's following orders, or do you think he's just a complete idiot, or both? What's your take on this?
Well, I've said that he's completely inept. I think that he's completely inept. I think he's completely in over his head. 100% he's a useful idiot, and I is his favorite word. It's his favorite word that he uses. I is an idiot. You're 100% correct. I think he's a moron. I don't believe he knows full well his job very well. I mean, if you look at his history, he has a big problem with the truth. And I believe he's doing that at Eric Adams' behest. I really do. This is what Eric Adams said on WABC radio. Columbia University does not want the NYPD to return to clearing encampments, and you can't negotiate with protesters because they're unrealistic and anti-Semitic. I mean, so he's just following Eric Adams' lead because he's Eric Adams' buck boy. So, he's just following the lead, and he's holding on to this one section of trespass. It's a lie. It's not even misinformation. It's a clear. They're both lying to the public. The same way when they're saying crime's down, they're lying. Crime is not down. Crime is up. So, I mean, I'm at the point. At first, I was like, you know what? We could mold them. The public can mold these people. Now I'm saying I personally think they should all be removed. I think Eric Adams should be removed as the mayor in New York City. I think his entire executive staff in the NYPD should be removed. Anyone 2-star and up at this point, if you're listening to this and you're a fan of this show, I apologize, but I'll tell you right now, if there is a change in leadership, and for any reason there is an advisement with myself or Eric, we are going to advise to demote every single one of you back to captain, regardless if we like you or not, because there needs to be a complete, utter overhaul. This ideology that's been baked in for the last going on 10 years now needs to be removed. It needs to be completely gutted out of the New York City Police Department. I mean, this is a lie. You're blatantly lying to the public. I don't know that there's criminal charges here, but there should be, because, Eric, I believe that these are, like you said, the same as you. As the summer progresses, this is going to escalate, and we're going to see horrible, horrible things happen.
Yeah, again, and they're addressing this with BandAids. we'll go in and arrest a couple of people for disorderly conduct, which is going to be dismissed. They'll move a couple people at night and put on a great show and say, we made all these arrests. And let's just, let's just say that's true. They went out and they arrested everyone that was taking part in the event. What is really going to happen? What's the dichotomy between these arrests and what's going on in the DA's office? Are they actually getting prosecuted? No, they're going to come back the next night. How do we cut off the body of a problem? By cutting off the head. Exactly what you've been saying. Attack the orchestrators that are actually coordinating these attacks. I'm sure these orchestrators that are coordinating these attacks in New York City have a nexus to these attacks and coordination throughout the entire country. This is obviously an organized group that's working hand to hand on a national level. Is Kaz Daughtry, does he have the understanding and the capability to connect with law enforcement from other agencies and other cities throughout the country to devise a plan together to actually start attacking these organizers? I doubt it. I highly doubt it. That's why I say, are they not doing it because they don't have the capability, the understanding, or they don't want to because they're being told not to because of politics? And it could be one or it could be both. But either way, they're being disingenuous. They're lying to the public. Just exactly what you said. When you read that tweet, didn't you say that it said there that I remember the tweet myself. I don't have it in front of me that he said they can't do any enforcement. Did he say that? I'm pretty sure he said.
He says it. Hold on. I'll read it again.
Yeah.
I'll read it again.
That's important. That part right there.
I won't read. I'm just going to read that part. These campuses are private locations that the NYPD can't take any enforcement action on without permission to enter the campus from the school. Complete lie.
That's what I'm saying. Right? If you didn't have a day of police work, anyone watch this right now, if you've never done police work, you're a family member of a cop, or you're just supporting us, which thank you, I appreciate it, by the way. Common sense would tell you, wait a minute, the police department, the New York City Police Department can't do anything at a campus? That doesn't seem right. I mean, that doesn't make sense. I mean, let's say, rhetorically speaking, if there was a rape on campus, who would be contacted?
Wait,
the New York City Police?
You're a cop on the street, and you hear screaming coming from the campus. Oh, sorry, can't enter without permission from the faculty.
Speaking of, right? So now we're talking about the response. What do we hear now from Kaz Daughtry? Always hearing about technology. Let's talk about this, right? Let's talk about drones. Where are the drones right now to be flying over the campus? We heard all about these drones going back to the West Indian Parade. They were flying over the West Indian Day Parade. They were peeking in people's backyards. You and I both spoke about it. We did a podcast on what the legality of it is. We actually pulled up Supreme Court cases that we thought correlate to the use of drones. Wouldn't this be the perfect opportunity to now bring these drones? John, what do you think? What do you think is going on that Kaz Daughtry has not mentioned the use of drones, which this would be the perfect opportunity?
Well, I want to answer one question. I'm going to get to the drones. You brought up our intel. I think our intel division, I think our counterterrorism divisions, I think that they are amongst the best in the entire world. So, but they are being handcuffed and boxed. I did a news interview the other day with Christopher Strom. He's a retired intel sergeant. He worked during the efforts of 9/11 and after 9/11 to stop terrorism in New York City from occurring. And when I brought up that fact that why aren't we going after the organizers of these events and charging them appropriately, he went off. He went off on a tirade about it, and he said, like, that these men and women are more than capable. And he retired, I believe, in like 07 or 04. And I mean, they've grown so much since then. They have so much better technology, so much better information. I 100% believe that they are being handcuffed and they're being told, they are being completely misdirected, as these tweets are political and misdirection. But to go on to the drones, Kaz Daughtry says he could fly drones over your backyard, but he's not flying drones where there's thousands of people partaking in an encampment, spreading message of hate, causing fear and alarm, talking and plotting about the revolution and how they're going to go into buildings and occupy the entire city. Right now, they're just occupying campuses and setting up military encampments. But they're talking further. A news article just came out the other day how to occupy buildings, and in that, what they were talking about is they're going to take over other buildings. What do you think they're talking? They're talking about your house. They're talking about your business. They're talking about your office building. They're talking about where you're going to work, and we're going to occupy the city. So it's insane to me that there's not drones up over the head the entire time, cameraing everybody and seeing who's coordinating all of this and go after those people. And just one more point I want to bring up is you mentioned the DAs. I know the DAs aren't going to prosecute any of this, but the fact that we're not charging the people we locked up appropriately is allowing the DAs to get off easy, because these people are getting charged with summonsable offense when they should be getting charged with felonies, acts of terrorism. They should be looking, and we should be looking to take these cases federal and then put it on the DA. Let the DA release them then. And then you go on the news and you say, we locked this person up for this, and this. We locked them up 7 times for this, and this. And this is what this Manhattan DA's office did, or whatever respective borough it is. But they're not doing that. So they're letting the DAs out easy, and they're actually aiding and abetting. So in my opinion, New York City Police Department's aiding and abetting. I could fly a drone over your backyard, Cat Daughtry's telling you, but I can't fly it over 5,000 occupiers who are talking about occupying your entire city and coming into your home.
You know what's interesting, right? I don't believe that race plays an issue when it comes to New York City Police Department. But right now, if I was a member of the Black community taking part in the West End Day Parade, I would be completely insulted by it and actually say there's actually a bias in this, because Columbia University, which is predominantly a white campus, we're not using drones, but yet at the West End Day Parade, we're using drones on people's backyard. So, you know, is there some prejudice or bias in that? I don't know. You know, it's quite interesting, you know, on the demographics. But I do think there is a correlation to demographics and politics when it comes to the use of drones for this. Why are we not using a Columbia University? Because is it about prestige? Is it because of their economic status that we're not using it there? What is ultimately the goal? It should be the same mechanism for the West End Day Parade to shut down violence as it is at Columbia University, despite their race, despite their creed, despite their color, despite their economic status. It shouldn't matter. Crime is a crime. So that is, you know, for people that talk about bias with the police department, that I think is a fair argument when it comes to that. So what do you think about that assessment as far as the use of drones in comparison when we talk about economic status? I mean, using West End Day Parade, but yet we're not using it this.
Say it again, politics. Eric Adams was black. Now he just has black skin. He is a white leftist liberal, hootie tootie. He was with P. Diddy the other day in Miami, who's being investigated for sex trafficking, by the way. He was also with Miami's mayor, who's being investigated for something else. So I don't know if they were talking about that legal case. I don't know if they were talking about us when they were down there. I just know he was hanging out with the gay black mafia, and he was looking to do whatever he was doing. But he's hoity-toity. He's at this club. He's at that club. He's everywhere. He's the furthest thing. And then you know, he basically, that interview that he had on Hot 97 with that girl when she abused him, that was like the Hot 97 moment when they asked Hillary Clinton, like, what do you accompany your food with? And she pulled out the hot sauce. Eric Adams pulled out the hot sauce when he was like, yeah, bro, I used to get eight joints out of a nickel bag to feed my mama. You know, because he's trying to relate to the black community by saying he sold drugs. And again, I think he's lying. I think he's just like what was that inspector's name? Corey Pegues. Corey Pegues said he was running with the Supreme team. He was doing this. He was doing that. They talked to Kenneth Supreme McGriff, who was the leader of the Supreme.
I remember that, yeah.
And he goes, I don't know who that guy is. And like, that's them all. Like, they're associates. It's like, it's the same as if me, Eric, and Sal, like, yeah, we know John Gotti. We knew Sammy the Bull. And then they go interview them, and they're like, we never even heard of that kid. Like, what are you talking about? By the way, he was like 7 years old when they got. But that's what I relate that to, you know? It's the same thing. So it's all political. I agree with you. I think if I was in the black community, I'd be outraged. I'd be like, you're not one of us, because you're right. Eric Adams isn't one of you. You know, I've said it 1,000 times. I'm blacker than Eric Adams. I don't care who gets mad about it. I'm blacker than Eric Adams.
I think you hit the nail on the head. That's the truth, right? Again, it goes back to what we said. We don't know what he's for or against, but he claims to be for the black people, but he's not. That's why I have a problem with Kaz Daughtry's statement on Twitter. Again, he made a direct statement. That shows you're either leaning to the left or to the right or taking some sides. You need to be right in the middle, apolitical. And listen, we're looking into the situation. We're going to take care of it. We're going to look to see who's involved, orchestrated. We will have you assist us, but you're going to assist them. You're the New York City Police Department, aren't you? You're the head dog in New York City that's supposed to have public safety. What did Mayor Eric Adams say? The key to prosperity is public safety. So how are we going to get to prosperity? But the police department's not taking any action. Now, I'm going to say this. And we'll probably, who knows, maybe we'll have our next criminal investigation. I would hope at this point that they have undercovers right now at the campus, gathering intel and getting information. I would really hope that they do, so they could actually find out who's organizing this. But I suspect they don't. Are you shaking your head so you agree with me? I want to hear your thoughts on that.
They definitely don't. They definitely don't. And I got no information on this, but think about, I believe we foiled 12 terrorist incidents that were about to happen in New York City that didn't happen because of the undercovers that we had inside of mosques that were spreading hate in New York City. And Bill de Blasio pulled them out, right? And then I think Bratton backpedaled on it, and I think everybody said that it was wrong that we were doing that. Meanwhile, we stopped 12 terrorist attacks that would have killed thousands of people from happening. So I don't believe that was wrong that we were doing that. If you're spreading messages of hate, if there's something. Again, I don't believe me and Eric are doing anything wrong, but if you want to label us the way you're labeling us and you want to send undercovers at us, I got no problem with it because it's not a big deal to me. It is what it is. I think that you going through my records and searching my bank accounts and my phone accounts, that I have a problem with, and that you will answer for, but other than that, to just see, to try to infiltrate or come on this podcast, put undercovers on to talk with us offline. I mean, that is intel gathering, in my opinion. I don't believe that that's happening at all on that campus at all, because Eric, what would be the political ramifications if that was found out that was happening? And Eric Adams can't stand up to that. He can't stand up to anything. There's not one issue in New York City that he doesn't blame a law or something else on and lie. Completely, utterly lie about. The dude is a complete liar. Kaz Daughtry, his little buck boy, is just completely lying for him. There is no way they have undercovers in on that. The most they have is they have some investigative journalists who are feeding them information. That's the most they have.
I was thinking the same thing. Exactly. It just shows that they don't want to get to the root of the problem. I don't think they're being effective at all. What else do we see with this going on here right now? We're not holding the faculty responsible. Why are we not holding the faculty accountable for what's going on the campus? That they're allowing this to fester, and they're not giving out the information to the police department. Kaz Daughtry said it himself. He said that when they responded, it was the faculty that was hand in hand, creating a chain amongst each other to impede on the pathway at the university. Why are we not holding them accountable? Right, we talked about going into private locations. If there was an issue at a bar, and we were doing in the past, I don't know if they still do it, what was called march operations, where the police department had a conjunction, orchestrated, coordinated operation along with the fire department, the buildings department, state local authority, where we go into bars and make sure that there's that it's up to code. That they don't have it anymore, but they used to have cabaret licenses. That if people were dancing, make sure they had a cabaret license. I don't believe they have it anymore. But the point is, we went as a coordinated effort in a private business to hold the business accountable. If people were acting disorderly in the bar, who gets a summons? The bar owner or bar manager, the representative of that location, gets a summons. So why are we not summoning and holding the faculty accountable at the university, especially at Columbia? Why are we not holding them accountable? Right? Because is there politics? Right? Is the police department in line with the faculty? What do you think about that?
First, I just want to say that Eric Adams is stopped the March program, which is where we would go into bars to ensure that they were up to speed, that they weren't selling bad alcohol, that they didn't have flies in their alcohol or bugs in their alcohol or bugs in their ice, and their kitchens were clean and things of that nature. Their bathrooms were clean and they weren't a public health hazard. We stopped doing that because Eric Adams friends with a bunch of dirtbag skells and he's protecting their businesses. So he stopped doing that and he endangered New Yorkers politically. So, but New York City Police Department still has the authority to enter any business, whether it's a bar, a deli, anything where there is a hazardous location or they believe to be a hazardous location, or they want to conduct any type of operation with any other agency. They could walk in at any time and do a business inspection. We've done it thousands of times. I've done it hundreds myself. Shut the music off, put the lights on. We're here. We're coming in. We're checking IDs. We're making sure everything's up to speed. We're making sure you're up to code on everything. And by the way, we brought other agencies with us for the stuff that we don't enforce. So the fact that they're not doing that, again, just shows that they're not in control of New York City. They're not. I mean, I personally believe a big part of it is they're completely inept. And Eric Adams is a man he's a rudderless ship lost at sea. The leftists hate him. The right hates him. The moderates can't stand him. I mean, I don't know who supports Eric Adams other than the people he pays $200,000 a year for basically to have no-show jobs where they do absolutely nothing but prance themselves around in New York City as if they're celebrities. When really the majority of these people, including Kaz Daughtry, wouldn't be able to hold an entry-level job in Dunkin' Donuts if it wasn't for New York City government.
Well, unfortunately, let's talk about the danger aspect of what's going on, right? And then the police department is allowing this to fester. And you and I both said it offline, man. And you actually said it first. You know, I say it all the time that I believe, unfortunately, there's going to be a loss of life. But you said it. We do believe there's going to be a loss of life, and God forbid, you said it, right? We could lose a cop. A cop is going to get killed. It could be an ambush. It could be something. But it's sure leading in that direction. And I think the police department would be completely responsible. They have the opportunity right now to just shut this down. As you said, we have the best intelligence. We have intelligence right now. It's funny, right? Because I watched that Newsmax episode, which is fantastic. But I remember when I was in Iraq myself, just as Chris Strom speaks here, our intelligence was given the intel and teaching the Iraqi military how to get intelligence and things of that sort from the New York City Police Department. I was in the Marines. Guys that were also NYPD cops that were reservists were now activated. They were working as cops in Iraq, getting intel, teaching the military there how to gather intel. So we're the best at that. The New York City Police Department is the best when it comes to gathering intelligence. So we could shut that down immediately. We could gather intel. That's why I suspect that we're not using all those resources, especially these drones. Where are these drones? I mean, he's got that PS5 controller. Send them out. Send these drones out. Where are they? Why again? I have a huge problem with them not holding the faculty accountable, and that's where I really suspect the politics are involved here. Because how do you? There's no bad troopers, only bad leaders. How do you shut these riots down? You find out who's orchestrating, who's coordinating, who's funding it. How do you ensure that there's order at the campus? You hold the faculty accountable, but we're not doing that. The New York City Police Department is just sitting there, right? We have Kaz Daughtry speaking to Rosanna Scotto, and no one told me this, but I suspect that it's being orchestrated. Really? Since October 7th, that finally hit your brain? Are you serious? God.
How about since 2020 when there were pallets of bricks being dropped off? That supposedly that's a conspiracy theory too, even though we were clearing them prior to going to these riots, right? Oh, that was a conspiracy theory. But like, how about that? So for 4 years, I figured it out. He also figured out the location of all of the drag racing locations in New York City. He put an Instagram story out. I mean, the guy loves to say doesn't give credit where credit's due. He didn't figure anything out. Somebody that works for him figured out all the pieced it together, handed it to him on a silver platter. I think But I mean, and just to go back, forget even the faculty. Like we said all the time, like they're not going after the head of the snake. They chase the tail of the snake. And then when they lock up the tail, they lock up the little pieces and they put the men and women in bad situations in New York City. The men and women in the New York City Police Department, they're in bed. It's a terrible spot, right? So in a way, I do feel bad for the police department because whatever they do, they're going to be wrong and there's going to be litigation. I think Eric's in his 7th lawsuit now since in retirement. Somebody did beat you, though, as the most complained cop. I forget, a lieutenant. I think he just took over your allegations. I think he has 160 now or something. We'll talk about it another show. But seven lawsuits in retirement Eric's going to have. These men and women, whoever responds to these riots that are happening, these nightly shutdowns on New York City streets and now on the campus, they will be hammered with CCRBs. But again, that comes up to the leadership to step up and say, you know what? I was at that riot, and anything that you throw at me, Mr. CCRB, Mr. Jonathan Thorsh, Mr. Arva Rice, we're shutting it down. We're gonna review it ourselves. We're not even giving it to you. We're gonna handle that. You know, that's a leadership there. But when they arrest these people, they still throw the men and women out there. When they arrest them, they don't charge them appropriately. So at every level, they failed, even with their misdirection. They don't even handle the misdirection right. Every level that we could see is a complete, utter failure by the upper echelon of this New York City Police Department and the mayor, because it's all politics.
I'm glad you brought it up, right? So you brought up CCRB and litigation, which we know is going to be a byproduct of the actual response from the police department at these campuses. In 2 to 3 years, we're going to see civil liability on these cops. We'll see substantiated civilian complaints. But what's interesting about this right now is we finally see some pushback to CCRB, but I question why. I'm really skeptical why, because apparently there's a rift with Arva Rice and the New York City mayor as far as her position with the Trower case, where the police officers 5 years ago now had to take deadly action towards Trowick, who was in possession of a knife towards the police officers. We've had numerous debates on Twitter and Instagram. Please, if anybody has an opportunity, take a look. John and I have numerous debates with Trammell from Progressive Action on the use of tasers, and it's not reliable. In a deadly situation, you need a firearm. But aside from that, what's interesting about that, Arva Rice has always had a biased position and a disdain for the police department, but now we see pushback from the mayor. That's why I'm skeptical about it. I'm skeptical that it's something that's an attack on him and not actually an attack on the New York City Police Department. What do you think about that?
So we did an episode, and you guys should definitely check it out. I think we did it about 8 months ago. It's called Are CCRB Investigations Fair and Impartial? And in there, we played myself and Eric speaking at the CCRB monthly meeting, Kowalski Treywick's family mother speaking at it, Arva Rice's testimony, and we played numerous clips of Arva Rice testifying in front of New York City Council, where she reiterated over and over again that she does not take the totality of the circumstances into account when investigating a New York City Police Department. Her statement that she made numerous times was, this is the Civilian Complaint Review Board. We're here to investigate what the civilian said, not take the totality of the circumstances into account. Clear, utter bias. I mean, we put that out, and I believe that that was 8 months ago, that podcast that we put out, that was watched thousands of times and listened to thousands of times. But I believe she made those statements in City Council over a year ago, and we were posting that on social media over a year ago and saying how she's clearly showing bias. The unions did nothing. The unions said nothing. Eric Adams said nothing and did nothing. And she allowed this woman for a year to continue to run her organization under that manner, that you are going to be judged by what the civilian said, and the totality of the circumstances will not be taken into account. But because Rosemary Maldonado, who is the Deputy Commissioner of Trials, said that she couldn't charge the officers who responded to handle the emotionally disturbed Kowalski Treywick, and who charged these officers with a knife, and they used deadly physical force against them to stop the deadly physical force that was being brought upon them. Because she said that the statute of limitations ran out, so we can't discipline them. I think Oliver Rice started beating up the New York City Police Department and started saying that they're inept. But I don't believe that I don't believe that the New York City Police Department is inept. I believe that response was inept, and I believe Rosemary Maldonado should have been removed immediately upon making that statement, because the statement that should have been made was these officers did absolutely nothing wrong, so there's nothing they should be held accountable for. And 5 years later, a year into the administration that's ran under Edward Caban, Ed Caban actually does the right thing. He does the exact right thing. And he said these officers did absolutely nothing wrong. They're going to keep their job and they will not be disciplined. So I applaud Ed Caban for that. First thing he did as a police commissioner that I could actually say is holds any substance. But it took 5 years, and it took a year into his administration where these guys were basically, they were on ice and they were sweating. And they're going to carry this the rest of their life. The situation is going to carry them. And then the stress and the pressure of not knowing which way the political winds will happen. Because when you have the deputy commissioner of trials saying, well, we couldn't do anything because the statute of limitations ran out, that makes me say that makes me would think I'm guilty of something when they did absolutely nothing wrong. We showed the video. We actually showed it on that podcast as well. But now all of a sudden he wants to remove her. Everything's about him. Everything's about his ego. There's something else behind the scenes.
Exactly. As soon as I saw that article that surfaced in the paper about the rift between Oliver Rice and Mayor Eric Adams, I said, you know what? Listen, I think it's good that Oliver Rice steps down. I think she has complete bias in the state for the police department, but I don't think that he should be getting credit for it, because I suspect it's something personal, something else. Because so much has happened in the past, especially since that pinnacle moment, which she testified about the totality of circumstance, that they only take into account the emotions of the civilian complainant and not the police officer who's involved in the encounter. That showed a complete bias, a one-sided investigation to these CCRBs. That was the opportunity for Mayor Eric Adams to put the kibosh on this, but he didn't. That's why I suspect it's completely different reasons, and I'm sure eventually it will come out. But again, yes, I will say kudos to Ed Caban, who I do think is the most insignificant police commissioner. I will say that. But on this, I absolutely took the right stance. However, the police department missed the mark. This is where the police department always misses the mark when it comes to transparency. A public statement should have been given to the public, especially from the police commissioner. Should have been from Ed Caban himself, because he's the ultimate decision maker when it comes to discipline. And what they should have said is that this case should have never went on for 5 years, that the police department acted appropriately, that there's no right and wrong, there's actions and consequences. Unfortunate, but the actions of Trowick led to his death by the police department. Again, actions and consequences. Unfortunate, tragic, horrific, sad, any way you want to put it. But unfortunately, it is part of policing. It's part of keeping the public safe. It's sad. There's many other factors that probably could have been administered to help Trowick in his life. But for the police department to respond, we had a knife in his hand. Those means were completely bypassed and overlooked, and it was too late for the police department. Police department, they have to do what they have to do. It's unfortunate. We don't want to take anyone's life, but they have to go home. But this ideology that they should deploy a taser to a knife is completely suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect. People don't understand the ability to cause damage to someone. You could probably hurt someone far worse with a knife than you could with that firearm, depending, I wouldn't say every scenario, but depending on the encounter. Close quarters in an apartment where you're faced with an adversary, you could do far more damage with that knife, because that knife, you don't have to worry about potential ricochet where you're firing that shot, as compared to the police officer, when he fires that shot, has to worry about ricochet, where it's going to go. Is it going to hit someone in another apartment? Shall he miss? There's a lot more mitigating factors here for the police department to be accountable for. But this ideology to use a taser that's completely unreliable is just completely unfair and just a ridiculous assessment. Absolutely ridiculous. But the police department missed the mark. They were supposed to make a public statement in defense of the police officers, and that they failed.
100%. 100%. That was, I mean, that's a disgrace, honestly. And it's wrong. It's wrong for the family, right? Because you basically drag this family along thinking, like, basically gaslighting them that, oh, we're gonna get these cops when the cops did nothing wrong. And then it's wrong for the cops. And it's just all around misdirection from the truth, because that's the only they're cowardly. I mean, the New York City Police Department, the upper echelon, and the last two mayors are cowards. Actually, de Blasio, he was a communist and he was a cop hater, but he was actually a lot more honest than this administration. And the New York City Police Department was much better run under Bill de Blasio. And even those guys were cowards, there was a different level of respect and a different level of professionalism, I think, brought by the NYPD administration under Bill de Blasio. But I do want to talk about I hate that this thumb keeps popping up over here, but I do want to talk about.
I'm the one that puts the thumbs up here, right?
Yeah. But I do want to talk about, there was a time when New York City Police Department does move in to clear the Columbia campus. I mean, they take it back over the next day, so it was almost like Hamburger Hill. If you ever seen that movie, they fought and got all these guys just to give them back the hill the next day anyway. It didn't even matter. Lost ton of guys, have casualties, all this. But Chief McCarthy, the chief of Manhattan South. He's the most powerful man in Manhattan South, 2-star chief. He's in charge of every precinct inside, and every precinct and every operation that goes on inside of Manhattan South. He kneeled during the 2020 riots. So to me, I have no respect for anybody that kneeled. I said that time and time again. The only person that I do have respect for that kneeled is the lieutenant who kneeled and then wrote an op-ed in the New York Post apologizing because he said how wrong it was what he did, that he got caught up in the moment, and he actually admitted that he was wrong. But we didn't see that from anyone in upper echelon of the NYPD other than that lieutenant, who's not in the upper echelon. He's part of the rank and file, right? He's a lieutenant. So to you, if you listen to this lieutenant, I got no issue with you kneeling. You did it. You saw it was wrong and you apologized for it. We all make mistakes. However, Chief McCarthy never apologized for that mistake. So Chief McCarthy moves in. He's been boots on the ground almost his whole career. He's got over 40 years on the job. Not knocking all his service, but his kneel was disgusting, and I'll never back off of that. Absolutely disgusting. His silence and cowardice during the mandate, during 2020 riots, I can't be overlooked. And to me, that's not leadership. You might be a nice guy. You might be even a fun boss to be around, but you're not a leader. You might be a fun boss. You might be a good boss, but you're not a good man, and you're not a leader. And that's my knock on Chief McCarthy. So he goes out and he clears Columbia. He gets put in a bad situation where two guys from the SRG effect an arrest, and they're being chased by a mob of hundreds of individuals. Now it's Chief McCarthy, a captain, I believe, and two cops with a prisoner, and they're running and they're trying to get into a private business. They're trying to get the security of the building to let them in so they could secure themselves in. So I posted two memes. The first meme was how it started, and it was Chief McCarthy kneeling. And I said how it's going, and it's they're running. Chief McCarthy's running, and he's running with the two guys. Now, I think what's your overall thoughts on that incident, Eric?
So I had put out a tweet, actually, when the Marines were fighting in World War I, it was a famous saying, retreat hell. And the Marines were outnumbered, and they end up kicking the Germans' asses, and that's where they got the term devil dog. If you ever heard Marines refer to each other as devil dog, they got that from the Germans. They referred to the Marines as, it was in German Teufelshunden, and it meant devil dog. And because the Marines were outnumbered, and they kicked their asses. I mean, thank God, right? We're speaking English today, but they were outnumbered, and they said retreat hell. So that I say the police department is not supposed to retreat. And get it? Listen, they're not supposed to be supermen and try to fight this entire crowd. But there is a such thing we learn in the police department as a tactical retreat. You can retreat momentarily. You get yourself to a safe situation, but immediately you should have got on the radio, got resources. When I say resources, get the cops to come there, respond, and arrest everyone that's involved in that situation, that angry mob. And that would have sent a message. But they just put their tail between their legs. And what does that do? That gave that was the intel that the mob is getting. I would say this is a dry run. So that mob just got themselves their own intel to say, wow, What could we do next time? We tested the waters. We were able to chase down this chief. I mean, this is the leader. This is the man in charge of the police department right now. We chased him down, and there was no repercussions. Nobody came back. I'm sure they were thinking, "Oh boy, the police department's coming back. We're in trouble." I'm sure there was some moments of paranoia. But guess what? They never came. The police department never responded. That's a problem. And even, what we hear from the police department, we'll hear Cass Daughtry speak on different press conferences, different news reports. And what does he say many times? Oh, these people have been identified. Detectives are going out to arrest them. That's important, yes, but I don't think it hits the mark the same way in the message. At that point, the police department has to act immediately, right? It's just the same way if you have anyone who's ever had pets. If you have a dog and your dog does something wrong, and if you don't address it immediately, they don't learn. You can't address it the next day. You can't say, "Hey, listen, hey, Rocky, whatever your dog's name is, sit here. You did something wrong." They're not going to understand. This is a day later. It doesn't make the same impact. He was supposed to take action right there and then, and he didn't. Why? Because he's a coward. And and we can see it, right? It's not how you start your career that you're remembered by. It's how you finish. Even myself, right? I finished as the most complaint cop. Well, apparently, there's someone who's surpassing me, but I finished as the most complaint cop, and that's how I'm remembered. He finished as the chief that kneeled, and that's how he's remembered. And he sure is solidifying that he's a complete coward, and he's not fit, especially in this time right now, to support the police department and bring things to public safety. He's part of the overhaul. He needs to be removed.
Well, I 100% he needs to be removed. 1,000%. 1,000% he needs to be removed. But I don't think you could put anybody you want in there right now. If in order for you to be in this upper echelon, you need complete compliance. I don't see any issue with the tactical retreat and the moving to get out. You got put in a bad spot. You got caught in a bad spot. There's 4 of you. You have a prisoner, and you have hundreds of people coming out. You get into the building, right? It's smart. To me, that's smart. I wasn't even knocking that situation with that meet. Like I was more knocking the response to it because, like I said, like we spoke about this offline, and I said I don't think that he's a coward for retreating, but like what would have happened in the past if you would have got put in a spot like that? And it's exactly what you said. We would have called in everybody, and everybody would have got locked up. And then guess what? In the next days coming, there's no way we're giving back the campus. There's no way we're letting these protesters take over anything at all. Everyone's getting locked down for the slightest infraction. They're getting arrested, and that didn't happen. So you're exactly what you're saying. So what happens? What we allow to happen, and that's what's allowing to happen. So a lot of people gave backlash. Oh, Chief McCarthy, he's a good guy. He's this, he's that. And I'm like, listen, you don't even know what you taught. You're defending this guy, and then there's other people. Oh, he's this, he's that. Look at the scenario, man. The New York City Police Department. It wasn't just him. There were dozens of inspectors and chiefs that kneeled. Look at what they created. They were kneeling on the streets to a Marxist revolution that was saying that you were racist and you killed black people, which is a complete lie. They knelt and apologized. An apology to say, yes, we did it and we're sorry for it. They took a knee. They got their cars destroyed. New York City got destroyed. The New York City Police Department gets dismantled not even a year after that. And then now fast forward, look at it. What are they doing? They're running from these same people that they knelt before. And I did it. I put it in a screen, like it was a big movie screen, and there was all these young white shirts kneeling, watching the screen. And somebody asked me, what's this symbolic of all the young bosses kneeling in front of him kneeling and in front of him being chased? And I'm like, this is how they're learning success in the New York City Police Department. This is successful. Just follow whatever the left is doing. Take a knee, have no moral integrity, have no line. Don't stand up for your profession, yourself, your people, your children, and you'll be successful in the New York City Police Department. And everyone's jumping all over it, like, oh, you guys, blah, 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 you're this, you're that, you're spreading hate, you're spreading this. I'm sorry. Like, this is what it is. Chief McCarthy, if you're listening to this, there's a reason I don't use the words chief. I don't think you guys, if this was Native American culture, it's disrespectful to Native Americans to call you chief, because you guys would be out picking berries with the women. You would not be leading the tribe. And clearly what we see, you're not cut out to lead the tribe. And it's not just you. I'm talking about how political the New York City Police Department became. It became political. You just happened to be the guy that was out there that day and got this picture snapped to you and happened to be. But the symbology of it all shows exactly where we're headed as a city, where we're headed as a society, where the NYPD's headed as a department.
Yeah, and you know, let me say this: a response doesn't just have to be immediately violent to correct an issue. You know, in this case, yes, they need to have their resources, call the police, come and immediately arrest everyone that's part of that mob. But there also has to be a follow-up response to really send a message, and that's by sending police officers to these campuses to ensure order on the day following, and the day following after that. And I can use this correlation here. So I would say when I used to work in housing as a special operations lieutenant, I was an anti-crime sergeant. Let me just use the last couple of years as a special operations lieutenant in South Bronx working in housing. In a couple of different incidents, we had a van that was shot at. Cops were actually inside the building. They were making their call, and someone shot the van. Thank God the cops weren't in there. A couple of times we were having a rash of the windows being smashed. Cops were inside an apartment, maybe on the 10th, 20th floor, handling a call. They would come back to their car, and the whole entire windshield was smashed. People were throwing bricks through it. So how do we respond to address that? So I would always have a pile of who has warrants in a particular area. So I know I'm giving away some of my secrets, but for any of the people that I used to arrest out there, if you watch this, now you can understand. How do we find out who shot the van? Who threw these bricks? How do we stop it? I would get all the warrants for the buildings that are in close proximity to that incident, and I would start picking everybody up that was wanted, maybe urinating in public, maybe if you just didn't pay a ticket for drinking, and I would have the community put the pressure to find the perpetrator because they don't want to have to start paying their fines and getting tickets. The same response had to come from the chief. Go to Columbia University the next day and put pressure on the faculty, put pressure on the students, see if anyone there has any outstanding tickets, put pressure, knowing that the police department, if you mess with the police department, you may have won that battle today, but you're not going to win the war. They're going to come back. They're going to give summonses to cars that are illegally parked. They're going to make life very uncomfortable so that this doesn't happen again. There has to be follow-up. It has to be a long game, not a short game. And that's what good leaders do, is they actually look at the big picture for a long game. We don't see that here.
Yeah, I mean, these are college students. They're not going to have warrants, but what are they doing? They're loitering. They're causing a public health hazard. Go in and take the low-level enforcement. Go speak to New York City mayor and say, we got embarrassed yesterday, and this could never happen again. Pull desk appearance tickets. Let's open up a mass arrest processing center with 2 computers, and we're going to take our time processing all 200 people, and they're all going to have to see the judge suspend desk appearance tickets, right? But there's nothing happening. No, it's like, we don't want to hurt them with the lightest touch, Madam Speaker. You know, like that's all we're hearing is that we want to handle people with kid gloves. And anyone that's going to misrepresent what me and Eric are saying, we're not going in and saying beat these kids over the head with nightsticks and do that. No, do what needs to be done. Take enforcement action. If they resist arrest, the level of force relies on whatever. We use the minimum amount of necessary force to effect the arrest. If these kids use force, then force will be deployed. If they don't, they could be giving fair timing and proper warning to disperse. But these encampments shouldn't have happened again after that scenario, but instead they strengthened and they moved to more and more universities. And now they're talking about occupying buildings and eventually occupying the entire city. And nothing is being done. And Eric Adams and Kaz Daughtry are like, there's nothing we could do. And there's nothing we could do. And they're just looking to deflect any way they can. So, if this podcast doesn't sum up that these people aren't cut out for leadership, and by the way, Ed Cabana isn't saying anything. Jeffrey Madry isn't doing anything. I haven't heard him at all. John Schell, Kaz Daughtry are the face and the voice of the New York City Police Department. John is Kaz Daughtry's driver. So he's out there every day. They're doing media. They're on Twitter because they're not going to allow the misinformation to happen anymore. They're not going to allow it to happen anymore. So if Kaz Daughtry is Eric Adams' buckboy, then John is Kaz Daughtry's buckboy. So
John is his driver. I wonder if they're going to get involved in any vehicle chases. That's pretty funny. But you know what's interesting? I think what you brought up is right. I'm sorry. What were you saying here? Because it came to my mind. I have to remember what you were saying here. What were we talking about?
I said that that these kids don't have warrants, but you should.
Yes. That's what I was saying. No, you brought up a great point that I wanted to mention. So you were saying that yes, we're not saying to go back there and start hitting these kids with batons. I agree with you 100%. Right? We're not looking to fight fire with fire. That would escalate things. I know the politicians love to talk about de-escalation. We're not looking to escalate things. That's not a smart tactical plan. If we have to use violence, it will be met. But what I was talking about, there's not necessarily right and wrong. There's actions and consequences. So the actions of this angry mob, they made a very unsafe situation for this chief and his personnel. They put them in some serious danger. There was only a couple of them. They cornered, they had firearms. This could be far worse. That's why I believe this is a dry run. So the consequence should be the police officers respond and make the arrest. If they choose to act violent, well, then the violence will be met to take them down, to overcome aggression. And then again, there should be consequences. When I say follow up and consequences, almost the same thing. Respond to the university the following day, the day after, until this thing comes to a quell. Taking preemptive strike, taking action. That's tactical plan. That's a long game. That's actually playing chess and not playing checkers. Actually getting to the solution of problems. And also, as you're saying, as you're making these arrests, back to what we said earlier in the show, you're gathering intelligence that can be fed to the investigators in correspondence to verify the credibility to find out who's actually organizing these events. But we're not doing that. And again, the question is why? And we suspect, we talk about politics and could be funding. That's the big question. Why? And everybody should be asking. And you should be asking that too. When it's time to re-elect and vote again, you should be asking yourself, why? Why would I pick Eric Adams again? Why? What do you think?
There's no way Eric Adams should be the mayor of New York City. There's a rumor going around Andrew Cuomo is going to run against him. I actually despise Andrew Cuomo. But he what happened in nursing homes, what happened to your father is to me is unforgivable. It really is. It's completely unforgivable. He was he signed off on bail reform. He signed off on 50A. He did say you can't mandate a certain pharmaceutical product. But I think overall, if I had to choose between Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams, I choose Andrew Cuomo every day of the week. I choose him every day. I think New York City would be so much better run, and I think there would be a lot less corruption taking place at New York in New York City at this time. And I think as much as he played the leftist stance, because Andrew Cuomo is a coward himself, as much as he played that leftist stance, he would have a different police department. The police department will look a lot different under Andrew Cuomo than it does under Eric Adams, because Eric Adams' police department is completely politicized. Our profession is called law enforcement, and that is because we enforce laws. But this department wants to overlook certain laws and only enforce what's politically friendly. And that's what they're doing. They're misdirecting these things. We're letting these encampments get bolder and bolder and grow and turn into something that's really going to be what the stuff that me and Eric are talking about. You're not going to be able to do it anymore. And now you're going to have to use serious force to stop it from escalating further. And this is what they're allowing to happen. So again, I believe in my heart of hearts that, like, I think what's happening right now in New York City government is they're aiding and abetting a Marxist revolution. And I think that they should be arrested. I do. I think that they should be, or at least removed immediately, and put some common sense people in there to go in. Let's identify all the laws that are being broken. Let's identify all the dangers that can happen from having revolutionaries talk about occupying New York City and actually giving property away to them, and let them set up militarized encampments to plan and plot this without, as they're being funded, and not try to stop any of the funding and all this. I mean, they're aiding and abetting. They're aiding and abetting to me.
I agree. There's actually something I wanted to mention with you, right? Which I thought was great. So you put out a tweet, I think it was yesterday, maybe the day before, where you talked about the press conference that Eric Adams had when he had Ed Caban appointed as commissioner and Tanya Kinsella appointed as first deputy commissioner, and he really talked about how the police department now has a new image in its appearance of diversity. The reason why I said it is because you mentioned earlier about DEI. So, and then I put up a follow-up tweet that diversity has become completely subjective. So it's interesting. Let's talk about that tweet that you put out as far as diversity goes with the police department, because that's part of this whole politicized movement here. What is your take on that going forward? Do you think he's going to, if he does get reelected, do you think that's going to be continue as part of his push with the face of the police department, or you think that was just a mask in his first tenure?
No, I think that he has a racialized police department. I think he has his token paleface chiefs, Kemper and Shell. He's going to rise Shell to the chief of department, to the number one token, the 4-star token. I think the tweet I put out was just a quote from Eric Adams. He said he had Tanya Kinsella. He appointed her, and he appointed Ed Caban as the police commissioner. And he said, the NYPD has a great crime profiling, a great crime fighting profile, but the NYPD has an image problem. When you look at the NYPD, you don't see youthfulness. You don't see diversity. You don't see, I forget what the other word he used, but I just quoted him on that. And I think when you look at Eric Adams' administration, you don't see diversity at all. You don't see any Chinese guys. You don't see any Muslim guys. You don't see any Indian guys. You don't see any Italians. You don't see any Irish. You don't see any Jewish. You see black. It's a racialized department. There are some tokens sprinkled in there. Ed Caban himself is a token Latino. He's not. He's a token paleface himself. Honestly, if you really look at it, if you really look deep into it, so I don't think there's any diversity at all. I think he's a very racialized person. I think he's always been. I think a lot of what he said, if any other mayor would say it, they would immediately be removed from office, and there would be riots in the street asking them for step down. But he gets away with it because he's black. And that was what I said about him originally. And I said it at an LBA meeting that you were at too. I said, we're really supporting this guy. I said, this guy is going to be Bill de Blasio, but you're not going to be allowed to criticize him because he's black. Right. And everyone looked at me like I had 50 heads, but I and I'm like, that's exactly what it is. He's going to be worse than Bill de Blasio, but you're not going to be allowed to criticize him in modern day New York City. And that's exactly what it is. I mean, the guy's acting with impunity because of the color of his skin. And again, I don't believe he's black. I believe he's a white leftist, a haughty-tawdy leftist, and he's the one sipping his lattes and espressos like Kaz Daughtry's Buckboy John Shell put out. So,
well, the reason why I brought that up also, because I think it's interesting, right? Eric Adams does a great job. I always say that what comes out of his mouth doesn't necessarily match the image of what he's doing. What he says and what he does are two completely different things. So he talks about an image of diversity, but all we see is just a black panel. Like I said, Ed Caban is kind of token paleface just sprinkled in there. But what he says doesn't match the image, right? You're saying diversity, but we don't see diversity. We just see a black panel. And I'm going to say this, right? Because John, same as you, I speak to different cops on a daily basis, and I won't give up their names because I know they're terrified right now to admit that they actually speak to us. But it's not just whites that are feeling discriminated against. I'm talking Hispanic police officers and Asian police officers, and they feel discriminated against also in this police department. We hear about the first of this, the first of that, but there is no diversity right now. If anything, the police department was far more diverse before Eric Adams was the mayor of New York City. Now it's completely lopsided to just top heavy when it comes to black personnel. It was far more diverse then in comparison to now. It's a huge difference. But I want to use that comparison because there's something he said about crime. And I think it's interesting. John, I know you definitely saw this, but he said New York City doesn't have a crime problem. It has a recidivist problem. What do you think about that statement? I think that is laughable.
Misdirection again. Misdirection again. Oh, it's not anybody in New York City. They're people coming from out of state. Now all of a sudden, now we have a recidivist problem. Again, the guy supported bail reform. He supported every piece of legislation. Now all of a sudden it's a recidivist problem. Are recidivists responsible for a lot of the crime in New York City? Yes. But everyone that goes into New York City now, any transient people, anybody that just comes in, that's never been arrested, that people don't know, they act with impunity. Why? Because what happens is what we allow to happen. In the past, people were afraid. They drove around the 5 boroughs when they had guns and drugs in the car because they said, no, they got that stop, question, and frisk thing there. Don't go into New York City, right? That's why we didn't pull a lot of guns when we were on the street in the years prior to us opening up all this legislation, is because people were afraid during the broken windows, stop, question, and frisk era. They were afraid to carry guns because they knew the chances of them interacting with the police that day in an intrusive manner by the police were very high. So people who were up to no good had this sense, let me not mess around in New York City, and crime was down. People felt safer. You went out on New York City streets at 3 o'clock in the morning, you felt safe. You went on the train drunk, you felt safe. You went on the train as a single female and took it home and you felt safe. Those feelings are all gone now because we popped that bubble and that's it. So, I mean, that's it.
Yeah, I just think it's completely disingenuous to say, hey, we don't have a crime problem, we have a recidivist problem. And yes, the recidivist problem may not be the entire blame of the New York City Police Department, but a recidivist problem is a crime problem. If these recidivists are out there committing crime, that's part of your problem. You can't, that's again, and I think that goes back to what you were saying. That's why I've listened to what you've been saying. I think it's fantastic. And I was really listening to you saying, like, no, that's 100% right. Eric Adams always puts the blame on someone else or some other type of organization and deflect it from himself or people in his circle. Because he said, "Oh, that's not a crime problem." So are you saying it's a recidivist problem? So that's not your problem. That's the DA's problem. But again, you didn't stand up and say, "Hey, this legislation that was enacted, I have a problem with. Bail reform, I have a problem with because A to Z. Or I have a problem with the diaphragm law. Or I have a problem with raise the age. No, I have a problem with the protest settlement." You didn't say that. You didn't say any of these things. But again, he deflected. It's not a crime problem. It's a recidivist problem. I think that is a crime problem. And he's the problem.
Everything's a misdirection, man. Every single thing is a misdirection. He's the king of misdirection, and people buy it. Everybody buys it off this guy. I don't know why. The guy's an idiot. One question he fails on everything. Why'd you say that you and Alvin Bragg were one and the same? What do you think should be done to solve bail reform? You know what he's going to go on? Oh, the judges should be given discretion. No, should be way more than the judges given discretion. The crimes that are non-bail eligible offenses most of them need to be wiped out, right? We have people's felony assaults. You shouldn't be. Why are you bail eligible? Why are you non-bail out? Why are you just walking out after you just committed a felony assault? Why aren't you waiting to see the judge? Why are you carrying an illegal firearm and you could just walk out on New York City streets again the next day? He ask him that question. One of you, he's all listening to this. Ask him that question. What do you think? I know it's not your thing. You're the mayor of New York City, but what do you think should be removed from bail reform? And I guarantee he's going to just deflect to the judges. He's not going to say anything else. It's a cop-out. It's the same thing that when they asked Cuomo, he said the same thing. It's all just misdirection. No, we don't have a crime problem. We have a possession problem. No, we don't have a crime problem. We have a recidivist problem. No, we don't have a problem on the campuses. There's nothing we could do. Oh, we do have a problem on the campuses. There's nothing we could do. Oh, why aren't your cops effective during a protest? Oh, it's because of the protest settlement agreement. Oh, the one that you signed off on? Why'd you sign off on it? Oh, my lawyers told me. Oh, my lawyers told me it would be worse if we didn't. Like every single thing is a misdirection. Every single thing. There's nothing. The guy's for everything. He's against everything.
I think honestly, it's a complete insult to Jonathan Diller's family. The murder of Jonathan Diller, a cop who became the detective. You're saying that it's not a crime problem, it's a recidivist problem. Guess what? Jonathan Diller was murdered by a recidivist who had a prior firearm collar, who shouldn't have been in the street. So that is your problem. That is the New York City Police Department's problem. That is Jonathan Diller's family's now their problem. That's their reality forever. That their husband, father, and son was killed, murdered by a recidivist. So how is that not a crime problem? I think that's a complete insult. And the things that come out of his mouth, it's all about him. It doesn't look at the big picture and care how other people are affected by his statements, because all that matters is numero uno, Mayor Eric Adams himself. That's all he cares about. And you know what? That's a good message to Kaz Daughtry, John Schell, Jeffrey Madry, all these pawns in the game. He doesn't care about you. He only cares about himself. So next time you lie to him, why don't you think about that? Put that in your head.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, he complete failure, and everyone around him is a complete failure. And by the way, they're all mayoral appointed. You're 2-star and up. The mayor. Don't tell me the police commissioner is appointing you, because he's not. He's not. Maybe he gets 1 or 2 appointments of his boys, but and he can move his other guys around and all that. But you're not. I mean, I don't think Keith Chancellor got to appoint anybody. So. I mean, you are politically appointed 2-star and above. I mean, even the 1-stars probably, but there are still, listen, there's still great people left in the New York City Police Department. As much as we bash the upper echelon, they just politicized themselves. They took the stance that they're now going to be politicians. So, okay, welcome to the political world. Don't cry when you can't take the heat. Get out of the kitchen. That's it. So, anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up with this one?
Yeah, I just want to say I want to piggyback off what you said. It's absolutely true. These appointees are by the mayor. Ed Caban is a big, is a big participant of the Hispanic society. Everybody knows that. It's common knowledge. So if he actually had a say, I'm sure it would be some buddies from the Hispanic society, part of the upper echelon, but we don't see any Hispanics part of that upper echelon. It's just him himself. So clearly, he's not taking part in the decision-making of who's being appointed. It's completely up to the mayor. I think I just wanted to put that in there. I think it solidifies what you just said. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think he was picking Tanya Kinsella or picking Kaz Daughtry. I don't think anybody would pick Kaz Daughtry. Maybe besides Madry, I don't think anybody else would pick Daughtry. Total mayoral appointment. I mean, and he is the real police commissioner. I don't think there was. I mean, there's a lot to go on, but I think it would just lead into another hour or 2 podcast. And anything else you think about, like these protests that we didn't hit? Like, what do you think overall? Like, what are your predictions for this summer? I mean, summer's coming. I keep putting that out, referencing Game of Thrones. Summer's coming, because I do think it's going to be a volatile time in New York City and across the country. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, I like to reflect on what I've been saying. I do believe that what we see now are dry runs. I believe they're testing the waters. I don't believe that the actual orchestrated riot has come yet. And I do believe that this correlates with the election coming up in November. It's my contention. I believe that the Democrats, along with this movement, are seeking for the next George Floyd. Honestly, I think that ultimately, that's what this comes down to. I think they're looking for the next George Floyd to really cause an uprising. And we see it, right? And we see it right now. They tried to do that with Chicago. It's just so egregious. But I do believe that's why my advice to the cops out there right now is look at the long game, be careful. I do believe they're seeking the next George Floyd. That's my opinion when it comes to this.
Yeah. The other thing I did hear, just like a little intel alert, I think Viral News New York put it out. He was saying that he heard from a bunch of people that they're looking to do attacks on any cops that are solo on a group of people. So just be careful out there. Try not to be alone when you're on New York City streets. And that's in any borough, not just in Manhattan or around these campuses. Try not to be alone. Other thing that we saw is that the political persecution of, oh man, I always forget the kid's name. The Italian kid, Provenzano. He was acquitted on all charges, so we're happy to see that. I think he should move.
It sounds like Provolone. I'm surprised you forgot.
I can't believe I can't remember it. Yeah, Provenzano. But He was acquitted on all charges, which is the exact right thing. Thank God for a common sense judge in New York City. But I do think that the unions, as well as himself, should be looking to take legal action against the district attorney's office for political prosecution. We also have police officer Juan Perez's trials coming up in July, so we hope you guys will be out there to support him. I'll more than likely be there myself that day. So, I'd like to see some of you guys out there too. I'll put the date out on social media, and I'll put it out on the next podcast, the date and time of his next court decision. But I think, you guys need to support each other, right? If it could be Salvatore Provenzano, could be you. Juan Perez could be you. Any time that you're taking enforcement action, you could have one of these left-wing Marxist DAs coming to lock you up. They're letting everybody else out, but they're charging you guys. I just think if I make you the police commissioner Eric, what do you think? Do you think kids would be able to attend these universities in peace? Do you think that you could quell these nightly shutdowns of New York City?
Absolutely. As I was saying earlier, I would have a tactical plan. Just as I said, I would address groups that were rioting in the housing developments by finding out who has warrants and actually taking action of the and the community having consequences. So they have to put pressure on the community of the campus itself, and that's by putting pressure on the faculty, holding them accountable, holding them responsible. If that means summonses or actually arresting them, it has to be done. There definitely should be undercovers at these campuses to gather intelligence. And yes, they should be making arrests and giving summonses on a nightly basis so that they could gather intelligence and find out who's actually orchestrating, coordinating, where this funding is coming from, so they could ultimately devise a plan. Also, as I said earlier, I believe that the police commissioner, or whoever is actually the police commissioner, New York City Police Department, whether it's Ed Command or Tariq Shepard or Kaz Daughtry, John Shell, they need to coordinate with other agencies throughout the entire country, and they need to gather intelligence together. They also need to get the intelligence from corrections. The best intelligence we ever get is from corrections. Do I believe that these kids have an arrest record? I don't know, but some of these people that are at these scenes are professional agitators and they've been arrested before. And so where's the best place to gather intelligence? It's also from Rikers and the jails. They have the best corrections units, have the best investigations when it comes to intelligence. There's a lot of information that's passed around in jail. So has to be an intelligence-driven operation. Gather the most intelligence before the summer comes, when the real attacks are actually going to be put in place. I do believe that you said about summer, I agree, that this is ultimately a test run, and I don't believe the real event has come yet.
Do you think that the upper echelon of this New York City Police Department and the mayor's office are prepared to handle if this gets worse? If in fact these Marxists continue to actually go ahead with their plan of occupying New York City, do you feel comfortable that this department will make the right decisions?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think the rank and file, unfortunately, that's who I feel extremely worrisome for. Because the rank and file, they're going to go out there and do as they're paid and trained to do, just as Daniel Pantaleo did. Daniel Pantaleo went out and did what he was paid and trained to do, and he paid the consequences for the actions of the New York City Police Department echelon who did not support him. So I fear for the boots on the ground who take action, because this is going to get violent. Someone's going to get hurt, and I do think that the police officers will win those violent battles ultimately, but they are going to be held accountable and responsible for it. That's the level of transparency we're seeing from the Civilian Complaint Review Board and this progressive movement with politics. I think the police officers will be cannon fired, and there will be casualties, and the upper echelon will not support them. And ultimately, could they actually bring this to a quell? No, I don't think they want to. I don't think they're prepared for it. I think that there would have to be an overhaul of the leadership of the police department. And if it gets that bad, I think there would be a revolt to have Mayor Eric Adams step down. I don't think that he has the emotional the EQ for this, the emotional intelligence to lead the city in these dire circumstances. I also think he doesn't want to, and that's part of his political plan, and it's unfortunate. I think we were headed for some scary dark times.
I'd be lying if I said I didn't agree with you 100%. So, I mean, I don't even think that needs to be added to. It's a sad time in New York City. It's a sad time in the New York City Police Department. And anyone that's saying different, you're lying. I mean, so, I mean, it's fine. You could lie all you like, but that's exactly what's going on. Nobody on all sides is saying what is going on. Everybody, whether you're anti-cop, you're pro-cop, everybody sees that there's a problem going on. And, I mean, I think that we've done a great job of outlining exactly what's happening in these protests, what's happening on these college campuses, and actually what they could use as a blueprint to go forward. Again, this is free consultation that we'll give you guys. If you guys would like us to outline all of the charges that you could go in to arrest these people on the campuses, just reach out to us, send us a DM, and we'll more than gladly do that to you. And that's not for the rank and file, that's for the upper echelon, because again, you're being held to this impossible standard by the upper echelon, and you're not allowed to take independent action in any of these things. So the rank and file is basically handcuffed and being held as political prisoners, and they're being used as pawns, as they've been for the last 12 years. So anything you want to close with, Eric?
I think we hit all the points. Absolutely. I think this is had to be said. For the viewers out there, again, thank you for your support. We do have people that have been complete opposition with stuff we're saying on social media when it comes to tasers and deadly encounters. We are open to conversations anytime. Anyone wants to come with this podcast and talk about stuff that's in opposition, or you talk about stuff that we're in alliance with, you're always welcome to come on the podcast. Contact us, www.thefinestunfiltered.com. And, please like and subscribe. Go to YouTube. Hit us up with your comments. We always like the comments and weigh in on it. John and I talk about the comments plenty of times. It's interesting. Weigh in, whether you agree with us. If you don't, we'd love to hear from you. With that being said, John, close it out, brother.
Yeah, and guys, just if you could do us a favor, if you listen on Apple, if you listen on Spotify, please just give us a rating. We've gotten a lot of hate recently. We've only been getting negative, and it's all coming from, you guys know who it's coming from. It's coming from the weak unions. It's coming from the corrupt upper echelon. So, if you could, it'll just help us move up in the rankings. We almost passed Jen Psaki the other day of Political Podcast. Her podcast is funded by MSNBC. She's got millions of dollars behind it. We're completely independent podcast. Myself and Eric use all of our own money and time. We're not funded by anybody. We do have one sponsor. We're going to be picking up some more sponsors, and we're just being very strategic about who we take on next. So so anybody that's looking to do a sponsorship on the show as well, let us know. We reach out, but we do not take just anybody, and we'll continue with our messaging. There'll be no production rights given over or anything, or editing or anything that type of nature. So appreciate everybody looking out. But if you're on Apple, Spotify, please just give us a nice review. If you're a fan, if you're not, keep giving us the hate. I don't care either. But if you give us nice reviews, we'll move up. I'm hoping that we could break the top 100 podcasts on Apple and on Spotify this year. We're in line to do it. We're getting a ton of downloads. I appreciate everybody that's been watching, listening, commenting, and even you guys in the background on social media. Listen, we put out posts, whether they get a few thousand likes or they get few likes. I see the views. The views are they're up there. They're in the millions. So so I appreciate everybody. Just sit back. If you're on the job, don't like, don't follow. Just sit back, watch, and laugh. We're not doing this stuff for the likes. We're just trying to do it to make this better. And the guys that are retired, you want to come on, you want to tell your story, you want to give your opinion, reach out to us. We do have a huge list. I'm not going to lie. We have a ton of people that want to come on here, but we're going to try to bring more and more content. And as this summer comes, you're going to get more and more shows are going to get put out on a weekly basis than what we're doing drip and drab now. We're going to try to get this more towards a daily show going out there. So we're going to be right on top of everything, just so the upper echelon has something to listen to in the morning, and they could construct their talking points.
Yep. And Kaz Daughtry, you know what? There's no I in team, brother. Just remember that. Just an iron idiot. Yeah. With that, New York's Finest Unfiltered T-Shirt podcast. A word from our sponsors.
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.